What's the most badass thing you've accidentally said in the heat of the moment? Big burly former Marine/mercenary from Iraq was back stateside, huge fucking mountain of a man. We came to face each other in one of the narrow corridors of the office where one of us was gonna have to turn sideways. Neither of us turned, but we stopped. I'm 6'1", 260 and he still towered over me. He was a nice guy, but still a little, conditioned. I guess you could say, or mentally unhinged. He looked me dead in the eye and said, "You feeling froggy?" It truly was like something out of a movie. Without blinking I replied, "You better jump." We both cracked up and turned sideways, while the office breathed a collective sigh of relief. I am a 4th grade teacher and one day I was up at the board and struggling to remember how to spell a particular word. I was trying to make light of it, telling the kids that sometimes adults need help with spelling too. One student replied, "It is because you were poorly educated." But don't worry, we are poorly educated too. Double whammy. What's worse is I think that kid was trying to make you feel better. At work, project management undercut and mismanaged a project so badly. They pushed getting minimum viable product out with the goal to roll out improvements later. Product released, they all patted themselves on the back and moved on. Then that minimum viable product broke. In a meeting we had with our directors about how it's so broken and the cost to fix it, etc., no cost too big, unlimited manpower, etc., I asked how come we couldn't afford to do it right, but we can afford to do it twice. They pushed getting minimum viable product out with the goal to roll out improvements later. Do you work for Bethesda? I wish. Unfortunately, I don't think my story is that uncommon in any tech companies. I'll never forget the moment a family walked into the local pub I was working at while I was working. This big king of the grill, bald alpha patriarch dad type and his wife and kids came through. I said, "Welcome, where would you like to sit?" And he snapped back, "Well, a table would be nice," and without missing a beat at all I replied, "Actually we usually sit on the chairs here." I'll never forget the satisfaction of that moment or the look on his face. Haha. You are the alpha dad now. My uncles were bitching about my dad, so I walked into the conversation and told them it wasn't polite to talk about people behind their backs. My uncle turned to me and said I shouldn't interrupt when the men are speaking, and completely out of character I replied, "I don't see any men in here." Boy did I get some shit that day, but that's how I knew I won that exchange. I worked in cell phone sales for a few years and a woman came in with a fairly new flip phone. This was 2018, we just still sold them. She was complaining cause one of the sides of the screen was dangling off and said she didn't do anything, it just snapped, and demanded a new phone. I told her that looks like physical damage and we don't have any coverage for that since you didn't buy a phone protection warranty. She insisted it wasn't physical damage and the phone just sucks and broke itself. She started freaking out and calling me all kinds of names and swinging her phone in my face, and then the top half of the phone literally snapped off and landed on the counter in front of me. I just looked her in the eyes and said, "Well, that was definitely physical damage." She lost her shit at my comment and it was weirdly satisfying. When I was 12, my older sister had a boy over for Thanksgiving dinner. She dated lots of douches, but this guy took the cake. Big, brash, annoying dickhead who was rude to her and basically everyone. As we sat down for dinner, before we were about to say what we were thankful for, he says inaudible moron grunts, "Huh, looks like I'm seated at the head of the table, must be important," with a huge shit-eating grin. Without pausing I gestured to my dad seated opposite him and said, "Actually my dad is at the head of the table, you're the asshole." My mom scolded me for swearing at the table, but years later told me her and my dad thought it was hilarious. After 4 years in an abusive relationship and 1 year of an abusive marriage, I told my ex that I wanted a divorce. He told that I couldn't divorce him or I'd go to hell. My response was, "Well, I guess I'll see you there." I then kicked him out of my house, for which he had never paid a dime in bills, and told him to call his mom for a plane ticket. Not the most badass story here, but it felt good. I was around 17 or 18 and getting my first filling at the dentist. They pumped me up with nitrous oxide for pain and to help me relax during the procedure. Dentist came back and asked me, "How are you feeling?" All I said was I don't, and he lost his shit and cracked up for what seemed like 20 minutes before he could pull himself together. I also started cracking up because of the laughing gas, and his laugh was infectious. So we were both just sitting in the room laughing, and all his assistants came by and were very confused, lol. I had something similar, though far more disturbing, which has been kind of a theme in my life. I got super drunk when I was probably 25, got in a bar fight, as was my habit, and got knocked out cold, also a bad habit back in those days. Woke up in an emergency room to a cop who said, "It's 4:30 a.m., you're in so-and-so emergency room, you just blew a .29 BAC, so I have to take you to the detox center now." I stood up from the chair they had me in, and the cop goes, "Hey, wait, are you okay to walk?" And I threw my arm around his shoulder and bellowed out, "Walk? Hell, I'm driving, let's go." He was not amused, and he got a little rough with me, but about half the emergency room staff completely lost it. Also, I eventually quit drinking and fighting, though it took about 10 more years of failures before I hit that point. I worked at Target back in college in a stocking job where we had to be there at like 4 to 5 a.m. to unload trucks. One morning I overslept a bit and walked to the unpacking line about 10 minutes late, eating a breakfast bar. The boss stormed over and started loudly berating me in front of everyone for being late. As he was going on, I was listening and taking bites of the bar without much expression, mainly because I was so damn tired. It finally bothered him that I was disrespectfully chewing during the yelling, and he stopped mid-sentence, held out his hand, and said, "Give me that damn thing." It just happened that I only had one bite left, so I took it, handed him the wrapper, and said thanks with a mouthful of food. He paused and started laughing at the ridiculous response to his bitching. We were buddies after that. This one made me laugh so hard when I played it in my head.